Hey friends, welcome to this sacred space where growth, healing, and empowerment are colliding today. Today's theme is all about reconnecting with your inner blueprint and living authentically. This one is dedicated to anyone navigating their healing journey, especially those of you who have stepped out of abusive histories. Here, we are saying no to survival mode and yes to thriving mode. So, what does it mean to live in alignment with your soul's blueprint? Kind of think of it as tuning into your innate essence, the unique frequency that only you carry in this world. This is what I talk about in all of my coaching, basically every client that I have ever had, and I'm sure that I will continue to have, is not in line with their blueprint because they don't even know how to find it. And that can be really difficult, especially if you have had an abusive past, because the definition of you has been defined by so many other people in your life instead of yourself. And so you've been dampened, you've been quieted, and you haven't really had the opportunity to really blossom and figure out truly who you are, like mind, body, and soul all together. So it's understandable if you're on your healing journey and you're like, I honestly don't even know what I want. Like, yeah, I want to be happy, but you don't really know how to get there because you don't know how to identify what truly brings you joy. You also probably don't know how to identify what is meant for you, in this lifetime, because a lot of it is finding not only what brings you joy, but just what feels right and feels easy. And I know that is oversimplifying it, but if you are doing things with ease, as in not making yourself feeling guilty about it, if you're doing something that brings you joy, if you're doing something that truly lights your soul up, then you know that you are doing the right thing and that you are connecting with your blueprint. So let's get into the neuroscience of this a little bit. Neuroscience shows us that when we are aligned with our inner desires, it actually boosts our emotional and mental well-being. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Dr. John Martini or DeMartini, excuse me, but I have taken a couple of classes of his, and one of the biggest things about his teachings is that you need to be in a place of neutrality, but in a place of neutrality with consistent growth. And that can be kind of a difficult concept to grasp. And this one of these classes that I took was literally, I think it was 12 hours long. It was all day and it was in one sitting. And I thought my brain had melted by the end of it, but it truly helped me. It helped me neutralize so many things in my life. So what I mean by neutrality is that when we think of something, so even if we think of, let's say, something that our abusive ex did, right? Something our abusive ex did, and it really hurt us. And now, every time you think of it, your emotional well-being is bruised, right? So you think about it and then your brain goes back into that trauma state because your brain can't decipher between what is fictional and what is non-fictional. So if you're thinking about it, you're getting the exact same emotions coming up as they did in that moment. So if you don't know how to process that, you still have a really high emotional charge to that moment. And when you have a high emotional charge to that moment and you don't know how to neutralize it, it's always going to happen. Every single time you think of that event, you are going to have that exact same emotional reaction. So the way that you work around that, not work around it, excuse me, but the way that you actually go through that is you have to neutralize that emotional charge. How do you neutralize an emotional charge? Excellent question. If you have not taken a Dr. John DeMartini class and you really want to learn how to master this, I would recommend it. But the core of it, the core of neutralizing this, and this is a very small but important portion of these classes, that I've taken that have really helped me, and my clients. So the basis of it is that you almost have to de-villainize this person by recognizing where you may have invoked that emotion in somebody else. So it's almost like making yourself a villain in somebody else's story. But there's moments in every single person's life, in your life and in mine, where we have been the villain in somebody else's story. And once you recognize that, oh my gosh, I've made somebody feel that way before, it neutralizes your reaction to that past event. It also helps you recognize in that moment that oh, okay, like I'm also a neutral person. You're not all good, you're not all bad, right? So that's part of the teaching of what, this DeMartini method is all about. And then another part of it, and a huge, huge, huge piece of it, is defining what your core values are and living in accordance to your highest core values. And there's so many of them. So it could be money, it could be family, it could be your children, it could be so many things. So once you identify your highest values, and I would recommend grabbing a journal if you can and writing out like your top 5 highest values. Once you write those out, everything that aligns with your highest values is a hell yes. If it does not align with those things, it's a hell no. It's not a maybe. If it's a maybe, it's a hell no. If it's not a hell yes, it is nothing and you don't want to put energy into it. Now, there are times when we have to put energy into things that we don't necessarily align with, right? However, this becomes less and less and less common the more that you are in tune with your highest values, because the more that you are in tune with them, you recognize them, you practice living according to them on a daily basis, then less of those opportunities sound enticing to you. If that makes sense, but less of those opportunities to do things that do not align with your highest values, they won't enter your energy field after that. So this is how you get to the place of neutrality while still maintaining a consistent like updraft, essentially. Because when you're living in accordance to your highest values, you are able to still progress forward and move upward. But when you're in a state of neutrality, it's a lot easier to do that. It's like having a machete to clear a path instead of like a pair of scissors. So that's the basis for that. That's really where I learned a lot of that. If you have learned a lot of that from somewhere else, then I'm so happy there's more information out there. But that truly is the base of kind of finding out a little bit what your alignment is and connecting a little bit to your blueprint. So I'm going to share with you guys a super personal story because that's what I'm here for, is complete transparency. And also I want to show you that I have already been on this journey. I've started at absolute zero and I've really worked my way up. And that's why I'm here doing what I'm doing, because I have been there. I have learned so much through the entire process. And I want to share it with everybody that I possibly can that has even an ounce of, something to take out of it that could possibly help them. So when I was taking this DeMartini class, there's a whole sheet of paper that you do, or there's a whole like worksheet that you do basically, and you pick a really tough moment in your life. So you pick a moment when whoever this villain was just did something that to you is like incomprehensible, like one of the worst moments that you had with this person, right? So you pick that moment and you dissect it into several pieces. And there's so many boxes on the sheet. And this literally, it took us hours to get through. The first time you do it, it takes you so long because you are literally rewiring your brain. But the biggest takeaway that I got from that is I was writing it about my ex-boyfriend. And something that he did that really, really hurt me. And I was like, that's unforgivable. Like, how could you do that? And you write down the emotions that it evoked in you because you're trying to figure out what your emotional charge is behind whatever happened, right? So we write all that down. And then the next prompt is, now think of a moment where you have invoked that emotion in somebody else. And I realized in that moment where this thing that my ex did that was so incomprehensible, I felt like I had made my daughter feel the same way. And for me, like I broke. It literally broke me in that moment. I started sobbing. I had to excuse myself from the room. Thankfully, it was a classroom of only like 4 of us, because the classrooms, this instructor keeps them very small and intimate for this reason. And I had to excuse myself from the room, and I did, those like huge sobs that like you can hardly catch your breath and like the tears will not stop. It was one of those. It was my tears were going down my cheeks, they were going down my chin, they were like on my shirt, and I could not believe that I had possibly invoked this horrible emotion into my daughter. And I will tell you truly in that moment, and I've always tried to be the best mom I can be. Like, nobody's perfect as a parent. I'm going to tell you right now, nobody's perfect. We all have those moments where we're like, wow, I didn't really like how I reacted. And this was truly one of those moments. And after doing this, it changed my parenting as well. And it changed my parenting because it really has helped me reflect so much onto every word that I say. And it's not even painstaking, it is more like I'm just conscious of it and aware of it. And so the things that flow naturally feel much kinder, if that makes sense. There's not this huge emotion and traumatic response behind the things that I say to my child, and this truly helped me work through it. So if you are interested in any of this, I would definitely recommend looking up Dr. John Demartini and the Demartini method. I'm sure there is a practitioner near you. If you are in a populated area, there may or may not be like online practitioners too with it. I know there's one in my town, and that's who I did it going to. But that's, if you're interested in it, it's definitely something to look up. So, to reiterate a little bit of how to find your soul's blueprint, I would recommend doing a journaling entry where you start with very intentional stillness. And so, sit down and really take a few deep breaths, get in the moment, ground yourself, and just sit in the moment. And then you can use some visualization techniques, and you can explore what your values and what your goals are. And so, as far as visualization techniques go, if I can find my words, close your eyes and just imagine, like literally you can ask yourself, what are the most important values in my life? What are the biggest goals that I have, and how do my values align with them? And you will definitely start to get this beautiful image of what your values and your goals are. And make sure that you do this exercise with absolutely zero intention of certain values or goals. And make sure that you do it with absolutely zero judgment. You have to be in a place where you are not going to judge yourself if the first value that comes to your mind is making money. There are so many people who feel guilty about having that as one of their goals, or having a really high value that doesn't classically align with basically what society has told us our values need to be. So you've got to go in it totally ready to be raw with yourself. That is probably the most difficult part. But when you are raw with yourself, this process goes very smoothly. Until you are able to be very raw in your own authenticity, you're going to have a hard time with figuring out what your blueprint is. And something to think about while you are doing this visualization too is to reflect on the things in your life that have made you feel very alive, like where your soul is calling in your life. Is there something that has been so amazing and really brought you so much joy, like since you were a kid? For me, it's art. Art is a big thing for me, and being able to create and pull my emotions out of my body onto a canvas. So that's just an example for myself, but there's so many things, and everybody has a very, very, very different blueprint. Your blueprint is not going to look similar to anybody else's, because you're not meant to do anything you're not meant to live somebody else's life. You are meant to live your own. So start with this. And I would recommend starting with this and giving yourself like a solid 30 minutes to do this exercise. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about trauma and how rewriting your story actually helps you to rid yourself of some of that trauma. I know that we briefly just kind of talked about it, but I want to go a little bit more into depth, because when you grow up with trauma, it ingrains so deeply. When we're a child, before our frontal lobe is developed, we are like sponges. And if you have toxic parents at home, if you were raised by toxic people, if your environment was toxic people, you are going to have some pretty deep wounds that are going to shape the rest of your life. And there's different ways that you can utilize those wounds, and there's certain ones that you can get through and get over. I don't want to say get over. I don't like that term very much. But there's certain ones that you are able to actually get through, and there's other ones that you're able to get through, but you can neutralize the emotion from it. Like we just talked about with the DeMartini method. You can neutralize the emotional pull on it, but it may still be one that kind of just sits there in the background a little bit for a while. And if it's very, very, very deep-rooted trauma, it's even more difficult to get through. And it truly changes our brain chemistry. So if you have had a traumatic childhood, if you have been through traumatic relationships, basically if you have been misaligned with your true purpose for a long time in environments that were meant to crush you and to pull you down and to hold you back, you're going to be having a hard time. And it's okay to admit to yourself that you are having a hard time. A lot of us, when we are in traumatic spaces, when we're in emotionally abusive relationships, for instance, we play down the emotional abuse because those people, narcissists and sociopaths, that's how they play a game with people who are honest, who are meant or who have the intention of doing what's best. They pick those people for a reason. And it's because they know that through their games and through their through the things that they do, their little, the little like microaggressions, right? That turn into gigantic assaults, right? They know that they can control those people because they know that those people have a very kind heart. They have a trusting heart. They are loving, they are honest, they are devoted, and they use all of that to their advantage, and they also use it to keep you stuck. Whether it's for them, it's conscious or unconscious, they're using it to keep you stuck and keep you controlled. So that happens in, I would say, like probably 99% of my clients. In fact, I'm going to say 100% of my clients have some sort of childhood trauma that is ingrained, it is stuck there, and it's difficult to get through. So that's what happens when you grow up in a traumatic atmosphere. Your brain chemistry is completely different than somebody who grew up in a safe atmosphere where they were allowed to be themselves. Now let's think about that for a second. So let's say that you grew up in a traumatic childhood. I will use my childhood, for instance, because again, I'm all about transparency and you guys are going to learn a whole lot about me through this podcast. So I honestly have a very difficult time saying that I grew up in a traumatic environment. However, from the research that I've done, from the therapists that I've talked to, from the help that I've received, I have been told that I have PTSD. And for several reasons, honestly. However, it's really difficult for me to say that because I know that my parents truly did the absolute very best that they could do for me. And I was stuck for a long time in the mentality that, well, they did their best. And so I can't really be upset at them for doing their best. Like, they didn't try to hurt me, but I was just negating the fact that I was hurt by their actions. And my parents were two very separate people. My parents, I have incredible relationships with now. I've always had a best friend relationship with my mom. And my dad, we've had a strained relationship here and there over the years. We're in a really good space right now, and we have a great relationship now. He's an incredible grandpa to my daughter, and I'm grateful that what I grew up with, I was able to process through, and I was able to process with them, and that they were, able to hear me so many times when I needed to be heard after I learned how to express myself to the best of my ability. And, that obviously, hasn't been super easy the whole time. However, I'm so grateful that I have receptive parents is essentially kind of the basis of that. But my dad and I had a very strained relationship for a very long time, because we communicate very differently. My dad, towards me has had a lack of communication, and has not felt like a safe space for me. As a young girl, I didn't feel like I had a protector, and that was really difficult to go through. And in doing that, though, in having a dad that I didn't feel protected by, I learned how to be vigilant of my surroundings, more vigilant, which, does cause anxiety sometimes, but I learned how to be vigilant of my surroundings. I also learned how to stand up for myself, very well. I learned how to tell somebody to fuck right off if I needed to. And I learned a lot through that. So, there's two sides of the coin when it comes to, trauma. There's a lot that you're meant to learn from these things. And that's really where that neutrality that we were talking about earlier comes into play. Yes, I felt like my dad did not protect me, and that was really sucky, and it was hard to deal with, because I could see my parents had dads that would go to prison if somebody touched them, right? And I was like, my dad would never. He would he just didn't have it in him. But I learned so much, and I got a lot of strength from that, and I have carried that through into my adult life. And so I'm so grateful that I have the parents that I have, and that I've gone through what I've gone through with them, so that I could be this person in this moment. So that's something else to kind of think about while you have your journal out. Think about past wounds and how they've kind of highlighted your inner strength in your life. So, like if you need a journal prompt, for instance, you could say, I don't know, like, what aspects of my journey have made me resilient? And you can journal about that, right? And honestly, you can definitely use pain as fuel. You just have to make sure that you can stand on your own 2 feet at a certain point. I know somebody that opened a bakery out of pure spite because their husband told them that they would never get paid for making a cake for somebody else, because he told them that it looked like crap and nobody's going to pay for that. So she did that. However, she had a really hard time. Once her business was successful, it was up and running. She's an incredible craftsman. Even after all of that, there would still be moments that would come through where she'd be, and that's what she told people. She's like, yep, that's why I started my bakery. And if you live in that space, you're not processing through it, and you need to have the momentum, and you need to be able to continue to process to be able to move forward and gain a new story for yourself. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about your true intuition. So like your technical gut feeling, right? Your instincts, and versus overthinking. Because I think a lot of us get those two things mixed up, especially if we are in the chaos mode after, being in a traumatic timeline for quite some time, right? When your brain comes out of it and your brain's like, I don't even know what to do, and I don't know if I can trust myself, right? And then you ruminate about it a bunch, and then you make no progression. There's a reason for that. So your intuition, and basically the thing that feels like north to you. And I want to highlight the importance of being able to really recognize intuition versus anxiety. So because for a long time, I've had really bad anxiety and panic attacks pretty much my whole life. I was diagnosed with panic disorder when I was 15. And I remember so many people when I was younger, and even nowadays people say it, but they're like, yeah, you got to trust your gut. And I'm like, oh, I literally can't trust my gut, because every feeling that comes through and every emotion that comes through feels like it's urgent. And everything feels like it is a gut instinct. And you can't follow all of those hits that come through, because honestly, about 90% of them are anxiety when you are an anxious person, when you have panic disorder, or when you have, even OCD. So it feels like you constantly have to figure out how to discern between your true intuition and then anxiety. And the best way that I know how to do that, and this is what works for me, so do what works best for you too. But here's a tool that you may be able to use as well. But the best way that I know how to do this was after I identified my highest values. I had to do that first. That had to be like the first step. After I knew my highest values and really knew what direction my compass was pointing towards, I was able to start discerning an anxious feeling and a panic feeling over my intuition, because I would stop myself in that moment when I got one of those gut feelings, and I would say, okay, is this because I want to avoid something? Is this because I'm scared? Or am I getting this feeling because it aligns with my values? Or how does this feeling align with my values? If the feeling doesn't align with my values, just even in that moment, then I immediately know it's anxiety. If it does align with my highest values, then I know that it is the right step to take, and I know that in that moment I do need to follow it. But if it's just anxiety, I'm going to let that go, because anxiety has really never helped me do anything before that that's palpable. Anxiety is really tough, because a lot of times when you are anxious and you do avoid, and this is a little tiny spin off on anxiety, but when you are anxious, sometimes you do avoid stuff that probably, maybe isn't connected to your highest value, or that could be a little bit dangerous. However, when you live in that state, it really, really keeps you stuck. So occasionally I do still get an anxious feeling, and I'm like, that just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't, it feels wrong, it feels off, and I'll say no to stuff. So sometimes maybe I am still following my anxiety, but it's much, much more, decreased occurrences of that. So let's talk really quick about intuition, because when you have that intuitive feeling and you actually follow it, you are creating new pathways. You're creating new neural pathways in your brain. So when you follow your intuition, you know it aligns with your highest good, and you move forward with it, you are creating the momentum in your brain that they talk about, called manifestation. Because manifestation is not wishing something into existence. It is taking action based on your highest values. That's how you manifest, okay? Period, end of story. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. When you start to overthink whatever the thing is, and you start to ruminate on it, it drowns the manifestation. When you are able to just say, yep, I'm following my intuition right now, I'm going to do this, I trust that this is for me. And you just follow it without overthinking and ruminating and pulling yourself back and being nervous and anxious about it, and sitting in a spiral, then you're actually able to move forward. The more you spiral, the longer you stay there, because you're just spiraling in the same exact spot. So I encourage you to see if you can pause in those moments when you have one of those gut feelings, and see if you can discern between, is this anxiety or is this for my highest good? And is this connected with my highest values? Okay, so you are working on neutralizing your emotional pulls. You are working on discerning between your gut instinct, your intuition, and anxiety, right? And you are learning more about who you are and why you are here. Once you are already doing all of these things, your nervous system starts to actually heal. And we're not just putting band-aids on things. I'm talking about on a molecular level, you are actually healing yourself when you switch your brain to do these things, okay? And once you do that, your complete identity shifts. I'm going to tell you during this process, if you follow these things and you really, really step up for yourself and dedicate yourself to this new way of thinking and doing, you are going to physically notice that your face looks different. Even if you don't lose weight, even if you don't get new makeup, you are going to notice a difference in your face. And it's going to be weird at first, but you're going to look in the mirror one day and you're going to be like, whoa, okay, I look brighter? What? It feels so weird when it happens, but just trust me, it'll probably happen in less than a couple months' time. So let's talk about your nervous system's role in all of this, right? When you are an anxious person, when you have high cortisol, when you are worried and ruminating all of the time and you don't allow yourself to flow at all, your autonomic nervous system is heightened like literally all the time. So your autonomic nervous system controls your heart rate, your blood pressure, your breathing, your digestion, like all of that stuff, right? And so your autonomic nervous system is always like, we are in survival mode. And when that happens, that's when you get the racing heart. That's when you get high blood pressure, even low blood pressure. And that's when you do, like, if you hyperventilate. I'm somebody who hyperventilates when I'm anxious. When you hyperventilate, it screws up your entire system, and you can only live in that state for so long before you start to, honestly, before you just get way, way, way worse. And you can live in that state for quite a while. However, it's bad on your mental state. It's bad, obviously, on your physical body. And it's just bad for you and everybody around you. So it also perpetuates anxiety, especially if you have health anxiety. It makes it 1,000 times worse. So we're going to come back to neutrality, but now we're talking about your physical being. Your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, is made up by your parasympathetic nervous system and your sympathetic nervous system, okay? So we've got yin yang, and we need to make sure that those are evened out as much as possible. It's impossible to do all of the time. You are not a monk. Don't put that pressure on yourself. However, when you notice that one is out of sync, do what you can to try to bring the other one to the same level and to neutralize them. Not to the same level, but to either bring one down or bring one up so that they are neutralized, okay? So if you're not familiar, the parasympathetic nervous system is the one that is in charge of the rest and digest, is what they call it. And so that is the state where you are at ease, you are living soft, everything is breezy, and your body, your mind, and your soul are just easy breezy, beautiful, okay? Now, in the opposite, so that's yin, let's talk about yang. The opposite direction, we have the sympathetic nervous system, and that is the fight or flight nervous system. So if you are familiar with anxiety, panic attacks, all that stuff, when you have a panic attack, your body, your mind, and your body go into fight or flight mode, period, end of story. And it is really, really difficult to come down from there. You have to, at that point, like, let a panic attack run through your body, right? And then at the end of that panic attack, you feel like you could sleep for 3 days. And that is because your fight or flight used all of the adrenaline that you had in your body, and it freaked out because it thought that you were being chased by a tiger or a dinosaur, which we don't really have anymore. And so then it actually kicks your autonomic nervous system in, and then that's in charge for a couple days. And depending on where your levels are at, you literally fluctuate between one or the other. In reality, we have to be able to neutralize those. So yes, it's okay to be anxious sometimes. However, if you don't want to pull it all the way into a panic attack, you've got to learn how to engage your parasympathetic nervous system as well into the rest and digest state. A good way to do this is to meditate, to do brain dump journaling. Physical exercise is also a really important part of this because of how many chemicals it releases, and then it also purges from your body. All of those things are going to be helpful to allow your nervous system to maintain a, fairly neutral state. Every once in a while, you're going to be anxious about something. That's just how it is. And some days you're going to be super calm for like no reason. That is just how it is. However, when you practice meditation, breathing exercises, journaling, blah, 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 you usually can neutralize yourself quite a bit better than if you don't do those things. And those are really important self-care practices because when you do those, you become far more self-aware. And when you practice those and you are more self-aware in those moments, that also ties into being aware of, intuition versus anxiety, and being able to really tune into what is for you and what is not for you, so that you are kind of solidifying your blueprint, your values, all of that stuff. When you heal your nervous system, it unlocks like a huge piece of your soul. And that, like I said, those are the moments where you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I am different and I love this. So keep that in mind. And if you can, I try to meditate like 3 times a week. I definitely do brain dump journaling. I'm also an artist, like I said. So for me, painting is a huge emotional release. And if I get like one painting done in a week, my whole nervous system is regulated like for the entire week. So there's different ways definitely to do it. Find what works best for you, and that's all you need to do. So now let's talk about cultivating a space in your home or somewhere that you frequently go to. Your home is going to be the best bet, but somewhere where you can frequently go to so that you can sit in stillness with yourself and so you can actually practice these things. If you have a space in your house, in your bedroom, even in your backyard, if you live somewhere with nice weather, if you're able to dedicate a space to literally, being able to sit down, preferably on the ground if you can, and just exist with absolutely no requirements whatsoever for 5 minutes a day, even 5 minutes like 3 times a week, you are going to start to see these massive differences start to come much more naturally than they would if you are continuing to live at a rate of, chaos and hustle and all that stuff. You've got to be able to slow down, and I know that you can find 5 minutes a day to do it. You absolutely can do it, okay? Even if it's 5 minutes right before you fall asleep. I have literally fallen asleep meditating before because after I've gotten my daughter to bed and cleaned the house and, done laundry and done everything I need to do for the day, I am wiped. And it's not as bad now. That my daughter is 8 years old. However, when she was littler, that was the time that I could find to do it. And it was really important to me. So I, would do it for like 5 minutes, and I fell asleep on the floor more times than I could count. And then I would wake up like 20 minutes later and be like, oh, okay, perfect. If you fall asleep, you like literally are excellent at meditation. You were able to completely quiet your mind and allow whatever needed to come through without emotional charges. Check my YouTube and a few other of the other podcasts on my channel because I do have some 5-minute meditations that you can listen to and that you can practice very easily. And then one of the other probably biggest things to do in this process is make sure that you're aware of your body. And by that, I mean being able to sit with your body and feel wherever you have pain, wherever you feel heavy, wherever you feel tight, wherever you feel tingly, all of those things. Make sure that you are feeling all of that stuff in your body. And we're going to talk, in some other podcasts about chakras and everything along those lines, but pay attention to where they are and then look up what chakra that's connected to because that is really what you are needing to focus on in the moment when you are feeling that pain, when you're feeling that heaviness, that tingling. So I would definitely recommend that. There's a book called Chakra Healing that is I think it's like the number one chakra book that you can probably find anywhere. And I think I can link it below. I haven't linked things on podcasts before, but I will give it my best shot. But it is like the perfect book to get started with chakra healing. And it is a great reference for everything for your 7 chakras. And then the other thing is just brain dump or journal. When you have just a moment of quiet time, just brain dump or journal like what is in your brain. That is truly all you need to do. Don't follow a certain direction. Just get out what is floating around up there, okay? So I hope that this this quick little podcast was helpful. I hope that you were able to find some tools and you gained some knowledge here. I am so grateful that you are here, and I'm really proud of you for being willing to show up, for yourself. It's inspiring and it is encouraging to the people around you as well when you show up for you and you consistently say yes to you. I believe in you. You've got this. Again, I am super proud of you. As you can tell, it's getting late. So I'm going to hop off now. But thank you for being here. If this resonates, please check out more of my podcasts and also check out the Sacred Liberation Academy. I've got, workbooks on there. I've got courses on there. I even do one-on-one coaching. I only open that up to a few people at a time because it's really important for me that I have the mental capacity to help and to handle each of my clients appropriately, and you deserve that part of me. So I do coaching, like I said. There's also group coaching and group cohorts. The June 2025 cohort is open now. Enrollment is open. So you can check that out. I also have a coupon code 20 off, all capital letters, is available if you wanted to do that June cohort. It is on the website. So if you forget the code, don't worry. I am not gatekeeping that and making you coming back to the podcast to find it. But it is on the checkout page if you would like to check it out. I look forward to seeing you next time. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and I will talk to you later.